It was the mid-1990s, and I was at the old Nucleus Nuance Supper Club on Melrose to see Harry Dean Stanton's band. I loved to hear him play, and we had struck up a casual friendship. One night after his show, we sat at the bar and shot the breeze about life, love, the movies, and while Harry Dean smoked cigarettes and drank dry martinis with a twist, an olive, and an onion, our conversation somehow turned to arm wrestling, and he challenged me. Now, Harry Dean wasn't a very big guy, and he'd had more martinis than either one of us could count. And he also had no idea that at the time, I held a world title in arm wrestling. Harry Dean put his arm up, we locked hands, and I just about pulled him off his bar stool. He shrieked, "Dang it, girl! Where'd you get those muscles?" And that's when I told him that I'd been raised on a farm with no running water, with wood stoves for cooking and heat, and how it was my job to draw the water with a pulley and a bucket from the well for a family of 9 every day, and that I'd baled hay and carried in cords of wood from age 9 to 16 too. I didn't think that anything could impress Harry Dean at his age and with all of his life experiences, but my arm wrestling did. I told him about my world title, and we arm wrestled and laughed until 4 a.m. Harry Dean invited me out to a dinner club the next night. When he came to the door of the restaurant to greet me, Rick James came running up from his white stretch limo, shouting to Harry Dean while towering over him, "Mr. Stanton, Mr. Stanton, my mama loves you, Mr. Stanton. Would you do me the great honor of giving me your autograph and addressing it to her?" Harry Dean said in true Harry Dean style, "Son, you don't want my autograph. You want this here girl's autograph. She got a world title in arm wrestling, and I'd bet you can't beat her." I was wearing a pretty pink polka dot dress with a scoop neckline and puffy cuff sleeves with a skirt that opened like an umbrella when I spun around. And I was dressed for a club, not a match. But before I could talk him out of it, Harry Dean had challenged Rick James to an arm wrestling match with me. It wasn't just Rick's cockiness that made me cringe. I'd read the terrible allegations about him and his abusive track record with women. Rick said to Harry Dean, "What do I get if I beat this cream puff?" Harry Dean said, "The winner gets $100. Being called a cream puff by this man made me shake with adrenaline. I said, "What you get if you beat me is you get to say that you beat a woman." He gave his 24-person entourage a look, and Harry Dean went inside the bustling club to clear a table for the match. The place was packed, and when people saw what was happening, you could hear a pin drop. Nearly salivating that he'd gotten his hero, Harry Dean's, attention, Rick plopped down in a booth opposite me, put his arm up to grab my hand, and when I gripped his hand, I saw his eyes bug out just a little. Harry Dean assumed the position of referee and shouted, "Go!" The crowd went wild, rooting for me to kick Rick's behind. Oh, and I wanted it bad. After we pulled and pulled back and forth, I took Rick down with a loud thud. He immediately screamed that I had cheated by putting my breast in his hand, which I had not done. Being a lady, I gave Harry Dean a wink and said, "Harry Dean, it's okay. Let's go again, just to be sure." By this time, I knew Rick's lack of technique and where his weaknesses were. Harry Dean shouted, "Go!" And we went at it again. This time, I kept my upper body as far away from him as I could. And down went his hand with an even louder thud. I was the clear winner, and Rick did not seem to know how to deal with that. Harry Dean shouted, "Pay the lady!" Rick pulled his pockets inside out and said he didn't have any money. So Harry Dean went around to all 24 of his entourage and had them pull their pockets inside out until he counted out exactly $100, and he presented it to me. I scooped up the 1s, 5s, 10s, and a 20 and stuck it all in my purse. That's when Rick did something unexpected, unpredictable. He said, "I like you." And he asked if I would honor him by being his VIP guest at an underground dance party nearby. Since he'd lost like a gentleman, I agreed, but only if he adhered to my conditions. 1, I don't do drugs, and I won't do drugs. 2, you don't touch me unless I say you can. 3, you have your driver bring me back to my car whenever I'm ready, even if you're not ready for me to go. Deal? He put out his hand and we shook on it, and off we went. The party was what I thought it would be. Lots of drugs, half-naked people, alcohol flowing way after hours, people getting their freak on. No judgment, just wasn't my scene. I gave Rick the signal, and he gave me a respectful hug, and off I went in his white stretch limo to get my car and go home. The next day, I let my son stay home from school so I could treat him to lunch, movies, and a video arcade until every penny of that $100 was spent on my boy, who was my reason for living. Only in LA.